Our next presenter is my husband, Dane Rosele. Dane Rosele serves as the Forest Management Project Coordinator for the Scott River Watershed Council. In this role, Dane is instrumental in overseeing and managing forest health initiatives within the Scott River Watershed. His background in forestry began with working for the Forest Service in 2012. He has served as a timber sale administrator for the Shasta Trinity, Arapahoe Roosevelt, and Six Rivers National Forests, managing large-scale forestry projects. Dane began working for the Watershed Council in April of 2024 and focuses on forest restoration projects aimed at reducing wildfire risk, enhancing habitat quality, and improving the overall ecological resilience of the area. In his free time, he enjoys hiking and nerding out to all things nature with me. Help me welcome Dane Rosele.
Thank you for that introduction. Today, I just wanted to talk about some of the projects that we've been working on in the last year that involve prescribed fire and forest health. As you can see in this picture, some of our forests are in pretty bad shape. We've seen a lot of decline, especially in these kind of fringe habitats at lower elevations. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little to begin with. This was actually a forest stand that we treated in Noise Valley on the Wildlands Conservancy's property there. And it kind of ties in with the Forest Service work on Hayden Ridge that Chris was just talking about, same area. And we were seeing up to 80% mortality in the Doug fir in some of these stands. And just kind of a good illustration, I pulled from a paper from the Oregon State University Extension Office. It kind of describes what we're seeing out here. They break it down into three categories, being predisposing factors, inciting factors, and contributing factors. And really the predisposing factors are the only thing that are within our control. So I'll talk about those a little. I wanted to talk a little bit about encroachment. This is another stand just south of that first picture I was showing. Another stand that we also treated. And these are sites that would have supported Doug fir, in the last century, but with climate change, really seeing that it's too hot and too dry to support species in the densities that we have them currently. And so in Noise Valley, we're seeing that on north-facing slopes that used to support these Douglas fir below 3,500 feet, it's really just too hot and dry, and it's allowing pests to kind of take over in those areas. Here's another drone photo of Noise Valley, lower elevations, and these are slight southern-facing aspects that we're seeing the same thing in the ponderosa pine, where below 3,500 feet on these south-facing aspects, we're really seeing heavy decline in the ponderosa pine. And so this would be the predisposing factor that these pine and these Doug fir, due to lack of disturbance, lack of natural fire regime, have been able to kind of move into these marginal sites that are just not really being supported anymore. And a big part of that is fire exclusion. This is a great map that Eric Yokel made for me. And we've got our project area outlined in red there. And really, this area would have seen fire every 11 to 16 years. And we have not seen fire in this area any time in recent history. The data goes back to 1950, but I'm sure it's been quite a bit longer since we've seen fire in this area. So now we're moving on to these inciting factors, and climate's the main driver of this. And this is a great tool, climatetoolbox.org. You can put in any location, wherever you live, wherever you're interested in, and see kind of, I think their data goes back to 1978 or 79. So, roughly over the last 40 some years, we can see that precipitation's coming down and average temperatures coming up. And because of the hotter, drier conditions, it's really, a nice healthy tree could push out one of these beetles with sap. But when they're stressed for water and resources, they really succumb to the beetle attacks. And so we have a western pine beetle on the left there, and flat-headed fir borer on the right, some common forest pests. So the wildlands came to us, wanting us to do a project to address some of this dead and dying tree stands that they had in their area. And so our objectives were to remove the dead and dying trees, to reduce hazardous fuel loads, promote regeneration of species that are more drought tolerant, and integrate projects that were already underway in the area. And I'll get to it later in the presentation, some great work done with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to improve oak woodland habitat. And lastly, we did identify areas that we were able to use trees that were not merchantable for the sawmill to be put in stream for some of the projects that Eric was speaking to yesterday. And here in this picture, this stand was the same stand that we had the overhead photo of in the first slide. And as you can see, we daylighted some oaks in that stand, and we're really able to just open up the canopy and kind of make room for more resources for wider space trees. We determined our project area basically targeting these marginal sites that supported these mixed conifer stands. The Douglas fir was merchantable to take to a mill, so we were able to haul that to Wairika and cover the costs of the logging and some the cost of my time as well out there. And then really the area of the pine that was able to be harvested was determined by what we could take for in-stream purposes, because it just wasn't it was going to be too expensive to remove otherwise. Here's another after photo after the logging. You can see that we've just reduced fuels and taken out a lot of those dead trees. I think, we did come in and we did this under an emergency notice, so we didn't have the ability to mark the timber to the conditions that we may have wanted to. We were kind of constrained to dead or dying trees. And those were trees that we determined would die within 2 years after harvest. So had we had time to do, a full plan on this, we may have harvested a little differently, but I think all in all, we had a positive impact and really able to open up around some of these oaks, and really what was left over were these more drought resilient species, pine and oak, because most of the Doug fir had pretty much died off. Outcomes of the project, we treated about 90 acres in Noise Valley. We were able to haul Much of those products to Wairika to be turned into veneer products. Trees that were not able to go to the mill, we were able to use for in-stream purposes, creating structures for fish. And then we were also able to donate some firewood to the Veterans Assistance Program, which is, if no one knows, they're just an awesome resource for veterans in the area, provide a ton of firewood and they're amazing. So North Rivers Construction was instrumental in delivering some logs to our barnyard so they could work on cutting into firewood there. Some partners we had in this project, Smith and Dysart Logging did the logging for us. And I just think they did a great job, really great to work with, really outstanding loggers in the area. Like I said, the Siskiyou County Veterans Assistance Program does a lot to benefit our veterans in the area. North Rivers Construction harvested the trees for our in-stream projects, and BBW and Associates, they're out at Arcata, provided technical assistance and an RPF for the project, and North Coast Resource Partnership provided technical assistance so that we could hire them for that. And this all occurred on the Wildlands Conservancy property. It's about 6,000 acres in Noise Valley and on Hayden Ridge that they own. And a lot of our projects this year kind of took place on that property. Now I want to talk about some of the oak woodland restoration that's been going on in Noise Valley. This was funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and really headed by Dave Johnson. He's a really great guy, knows a ton about oak woodlands. So if you ever get a chance to chat with him about oak trees, it's pretty awesome. So here's a map of the project area. I think it was just over 200 acres, focusing on removing junipers and pines that were encroaching on these oak stands, and also doing drip line plus treatments, which is basically removing brush within the drip line plus an additional area around the oaks to kind of create resilience from catastrophic fire. And we were able to kind of reintroduce fire into these areas. And as you can see in these pictures on the left, we opened up these areas a lot, and the oaks have a lot more sunlight and resources available to them. We have lots of partners on this project. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, of course, I already mentioned, and then Lomacotsi Project. They're out of Southern Oregon, and they do specialize in this kind of oak woodland restoration work. And so they did all the layout of the units, and their crews also did all the piling. And then in collaboration with these other groups, the Watershed Council did the burning this winter, which we're hoping to finish up starting Sunday. We'll be burning Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday out there. So if you see smoke coming up from over there, just know we have healthier oak woodlands for it. And then, Quartz Valley Indian Reservation lent a lot of help in burning these piles with us. The Shasta Valley RCD has helped us a lot. And then Sam Camarto from Cross Contour has lent a hand as a burn boss out there, as well as Eric Dara from the Mid-Klamath Watershed Council. And so we kind of have these two projects going in Noise Valley. And, the first project they shared was kind of like a reaction to something negative that we saw happening in the ecosystems. And So really, we wanted to take like a proactive approach in forest management and not just always be chasing the dead trees, so which is easy to do. So we covered the property, the wildlands property, and came up with some next steps where we're trying to connect into that oak woodland work that was done, and as well as our other forest health project that we did. To kind of create continuous treatment across the landscape, and also create some safety features along Highway 3. And in this photo, you can see an area that we're planning to treat along Highway 3 to create shaded fuel break for safer access to the area. These are some of the current conditions we're seeing out there. There's a lot of things that kind of lead up to these conditions. It's easy to look at a forest and just take it for what it is, but I think it's important to say, what happened to lead us to this? And really, we in the past had logging practices that created these single-age kind of oversimplified stands that have not been well managed since. So they've been allowed to grow into these kind of thickets, and they don't offer a whole lot of habitat value to animals. There's not a whole lot of diversity in these stands, mostly purely ponderosa pine, limited sunlight to the forest floor. And so we're planning on going in to thin these areas, mostly through manual treatments, hand piling and burning, but also with some mastication as well. Here we have a historic photo of Hayden Ridge from 1944, part of our project area and part of the project area, the East Fork project that Chris was mentioning. And it's hard to tell the difference in these photos, but when you really get down and look at it, there's more space between the trees in this 44 photo, and roads haven't been constructed yet on the ridge. And so really we're trying to get back to those forests that have wider space trees, more gaps and patches, more of just a heterogeneous landscape with more diversity. And of course, that's kind of our objective in this project. And this is a slide I took out of a paper. I have to cite this paper. But anyway, it is just kind of illustrating that an overly dense forest, it's at risk for catastrophic wildfire, and we can do fuels reduction out there while holding on to some of these habitat features, such as downed logs and patches of brush and patches of small trees, and create gaps where grasses and forbs can grow, that animals can forage on. And I really think outside of the WUI, our fuels management needs to lean into this kind of wildlife friendly fuels reduction, where it's not just an area that you can see for a mile through the forest, because larger animals like to have screens. And I think I'm running out of time here, so I'll go a little quicker. Here's a map of our project area. You can see how we've tied into some forest treatments along the ridge. We'd like to treat a lot more, but this is what we determined we could do with the funding we have. And we got funding through the NCRP from the CAL FIRE Forest Health Program. This is a project that we've done in the Greenview and Quartz Valley areas. One of my coworkers, Joe Curto, has been working on this project since before I started working here, but it's created a lot of defensible space around these communities and created safer access to these areas for firefighting. And, with the current fire, the Shelley fire that happened this summer, I think this work was really essential in protecting this area. And lastly, I have a video that Joe shared of some of the work they did out there. Do we have time for questions?
No. I'll let you. Okay, roll up.